Let's see. Where did I put that? Over here. Put that. All right, guys. What is up, everyone? Hope everyone's having a good day. Let's see. What is up, Lazarus 0530? All right, what's up, Bob Doling Dead? All right, well, today we are going to, someone said need an update on Ukraine. It looks like, so Russia has officially acknowledged, like, casualties for their soldiers. I think they're going with, like, over 400, which is actually really something, because the total that they're claiming right now would be roughly how many U.S. soldiers died in the invasion of Iraq over, like, the first 10 months. And, like, in this short period, that is, like, how, I guess, poorly Russia's military is doing up to this point. I'm not sure if that's the best way to phrase it, but yeah, that's one of the bigger updates from today. But yeah, today we are going to be looking at Joe Biden's State of the Union. I've heard it's one of the greatest State of the Unions of all time. I'm just kidding. I haven't heard that. I haven't seen it yet. I know that he at one point calls, like, Ukraine Iranian or something like that. Like, he misspeaks or something like that. But yeah, we're just going to get right into it. Someone said it was absolutely terrible. Well, let's see.
Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, members of Congress and the Cabinet, Justices of the Supreme Court, my fellow Americans. Last year, COVID-19 kept us apart. This year, we're finally together again. Tonight,
That is one of the things that gets me at the State of the Union. They clap for literally everything. It's just so, like, I feel like they gotta have, like, they should put some sort of rule where you can't clap for everything, but, like, they clap the entire time.
tonight we meet as Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, but most importantly, as Americans, with the duty to one another, to America, to the American people, to the Constitution, and an unwavering resolve that freedom will always triumph over tyranny.
Everything. They clap for all of it. Someone said prepare to be disappointed. Lots of clap. Yeah, it's every time there's a lot of clapping. Every time. I want to see this part where he calls Iran, like, I know that he says Ukrainian, he actually says, like, Iranian. Like, I wonder if it's actually, like, bad.
Vladimir Putin sought to shake the very foundations of the free world, thinking he could make it bend to his menacing ways. But he badly miscalculated. He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people.
He's not wrong. For people that are just tuning in, yeah, Russia is, like, officially, like, claiming troop casualties now, and they're saying they've lost, like, 400 troops, which is just remarkable in the sense that, like, over the, like, first 10 months of the U.S. invasion of Iraq, that's roughly how many U.S. troops we lost, and so, like, they've done that in the course of, like, this, what is it, less than 2 weeks, so it's pretty crazy.
President Zelensky, to every Ukrainian, their fearlessness, their courage, their determination literally inspires the world. Groups of citizens blocking tanks with their bodies. Everyone from students to retirees to teachers turned soldiers defending their homeland. And in this struggle, President Zelensky said in his speech to the European Parliament, "Light will win over darkness." The Ukrainian ambassador to the United States is here tonight, sitting with the First Lady. Let each of us, if you're able to stand and send an unmistakable signal to the world of Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I wonder how much domestic stuff he's going to end up talking about, or if it'll be mostly focused on Ukraine. For people just tuning in, I haven't watched this yet, and so I'm curious to see how this is. I've heard it's not like great. I've heard it's also not like terrible. I've heard it's pretty eh.
She's bright, she's strong, and she's resolved. Yes. We, the United States of America, stand with the Ukrainian people. Throughout our history, we've learned this lesson. When dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos. They keep moving, and the cost, the threats to America and America to the world keeps rising. That's why the NATO alliance was created, to secure peace and stability in Europe after World War II. The United States is a member, along with 29 other nations. It matters. American diplomacy matters. American resolve matters. Putin's latest attack on Ukraine was premeditated and totally unprovoked. He rejected repeated efforts at diplomacy. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't...
Like, while I do, obviously, I think that the invasion of Ukraine was terrible. I don't support Putin at all. I think that Biden is inaccurate here to say that every attempt at diplomacy was tried. I don't think that there was a strong enough attempt by the U.S. specifically to try and prevent this war diplomatically is what I mean. Because you saw people like Emmanuel Macron, like he was trying. He was really trying to, like, that's the president of France or prime minister. I don't know. I feel like, countries like Boris Johnson's UK, Biden's America, like I feel like there could have been more of an attempt at a diplomatic solution. But I mean, he is right to say that, like, Putin has zero justification for this.
He thought he could divide us at home, in this chamber, in this nation. He thought he could divide us in Europe as well. But Putin was wrong. We are ready. We are united, and that's what we did. We stayed united. We prepared extensively and carefully. We spent months building coalitions of other freedom-loving nations in Europe and the Americas, from America to the Asian and African continents, to confront Putin. Like many of you, I spent countless hours unifying our European allies. We shared with the world in advance what we knew Putin was planning and precisely how we would try to falsify and justify his aggression. We countered Russia's lies with the truth. And now that he's acted, the free world is holding him accountable, along with 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and many others. Even Switzerland are inflicting pain on Russia and supporting the people of Ukraine.
There is an enormous... Yeah, the Russian economy has taken a giant hit. There are reports of bank runs. There are reports of people attempting to pay, like, with their cards at hotels and, like, not being able to. Yeah, the Russian economy is without question being hurt by this, but that's not the question. We knew the sanctions will obviously hurt the economy. The question, though, is will it have the impact that we want? Will it cause Putin to withdraw? I think that that's pretty unlikely. I've only seen one poll, and also it's kind of questionable, like, what opinion polls we get, like, coming out of Russia. I saw some opinion polls that say that this hasn't really affected Putin's popularity, but I'm just skeptical of those polls right away. But I do think it's also interesting is that you see, like, after, like, 9/11, George Bush's approval rating, I think, like, hit in the 90%. Like, it was like this massive, like, rally around the president sort of thing. Now, that didn't last for super long, but it was like a thing. You haven't... Now, this isn't an attack on the U.S., and so that's probably why you're not seeing the similar effect with Biden, but there was a YouGov poll that came out recently. It was actually really interesting because, like, when people were asked about, like, specific policies, people, for the most part, aligned with, like, what Biden has done up to this point. But then when asked, do you think Biden is handling this well? they said no, and so it was really strange. Like the majority of people didn't support sending U.S. troops. That's Biden's position. The majority of people did support sanctions. That's what Biden's done. The majority of people support like sending weapons. That's what Biden's done. But like because of that, they still didn't support what Biden is doing. It's just weird. There's like this disconnect, and so like the partisanship I feel like is still kind of there. But
Putin is now isolated from the world more than he has ever been. Together, along with our allies, we are right now enforcing powerful economic sanctions. We're cutting off Russia's largest banks from the international financial system, preventing Russia's central bank from defending the Russian ruble, making Putin 600.
Yeah, the ruble has dropped like 40% in value, and I believe the Russian central bank increased interest rates from like 9% to 20%, which is just like, I mean, just to put that in perspective, like in the US, like interest rates are like pretty close to zero right now. And like the market like panics when there's talks of raising the interest rate by like 0.5%. And so keep that in mind for here in the US. The Russian central bank recently doubled their interest rate from 9% to 20%. And so like, I mean, that's they are not doing well right now.
$3 billion war fund worthless. We're choking Russia's access. We're choking Russia's access to technology that will sap its economic strength and weaken its military for years to come. Tonight, I say to the Russian oligarchs and the corrupt leaders who built billions of dollars off this violent regime, no more. The United States, I mean it. The United States Department of Justice is assembling a dedicated task force to go after the crimes of the Russian oligarchs. We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for your ill-begotten gains. And tonight, I'm announcing...
Let's have this kind of energy for going after for U.S. oligarchs too. Like, it's like, oh, we're gonna go after the gain. I don't know what he's gonna say in terms of domestic politics, but he's talking about going after oligarchs. So we've got a few of those here in the U.S.
We'll join our allies in closing off American airspace to all Russian flights, further isolating Russia and adding additional squeeze on their economy.
Yeah, not allowing Russian flights over U.S. That's probably that's expected. I know that Canada had already done that, and I feel like the only time that would like really be a thing is like I guess Russia flying over Alaska, but I guess they're just not going to do it anymore.
He has no idea what's coming. The ruble has already lost 30% of its value. The Russian stock market has lost 40% of its value, and trading remains suspended. The Russian economy is reeling, and Putin alone is the one to blame. Together with our allies, we're providing support to the Ukrainians in their fight for freedom.
I think that when he says that that Putin is to blame for the economy tanking, I think that there's going to be an issue of like that being the perception of the Russian people, because this is what we see a lot with these sanctions. So you saw it in Cuba, you saw it in Iraq, you saw it in Iran, in Venezuela. And I think there's less evidence of this in Venezuela, but those three. The sanctions have just strengthened the regime in all three of those countries. Like the people didn't say like, oh, we're getting sanctioned because of our leader's bad. They just said, oh, the U.S. is sanctioning us, so we don't like the U.S. more. And then they turned to Castro. Like Castro was strengthened by the sanctions. The Iranian regime is strengthened by the sanctions. So is that going to be the same effect in Russia? I don't know. I'm not sure what how strong the propaganda machine is within inside Russia. I'd imagine it's pretty strong. But
assistance, economic assistance, humanitarian assistance. We're giving more than $1 billion in direct assistance to Ukraine, and will continue to aid the Ukrainian people as they defend their country and help ease their suffering.
Now that's $1 billion including humanitarian and military. I'd be interested to know what the breakdown is of like how much of that is lethal aid. I'd imagine it's pretty sizable.
forces are not engaged and will not engage in the conflict with Russian forces in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies in the event that Putin decides to keep moving west. For that purpose, we have mobilized American ground forces, air squadrons, ship deployments to protect NATO countries including Poland, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And as I've made crystal clear, the United States and our allies will defend every inch of territory that is NATO territory with the full force of our collective power.
So while I obviously have critiques of the response, I think I do like that Biden is drawing this red line of that we won't send troops into Ukraine, just because that would likely escalate into a World War III. Like U.S. troops fighting Russian troops. This is why the idea of a no-fly zone. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about that here. No-fly zone, really bad idea. If the U.S. says it's a no-fly zone over Ukraine, that would imply that we would be shooting down Russian planes that attempted to fly over Ukraine. That would be considered an act of war. And so, like, I like that he's drawing this line in the sand. Obviously, I disagree with a lot of the other things, but if he stays true to that, I think that's really good, because we don't want World War III.
And we're clear-eyed. Ukrainians are fighting back with pure courage. But the next few days, weeks, and months will be hard on them. Putin has unleashed violence and chaos. But while he may make gains on the battlefield, he'll pay a continuing high price over the long run. And a pound of Ukrainian people, proud, proud people, pound for pound, ready to fight with every inch of energy they have. They've known 30 years of independence, have repeatedly shown that they will not tolerate anyone who tries to take their country backwards. To all Americans, I'll be honest with you, as I always promised I would be.
You know, that's actually an interesting point, is the idea that, like, if Putin's goal here was to show, like, oh, Ukraine is not a real country, it's just like a part of Russia, he has done the exact opposite. Like, what we have clearly seen is that there is very much like a national identity within Ukraine. Like, they very much, there's a giant portion of that population that thinks we are our own country, we don't want to be independent. So, like, if Putin was like, oh no, you guys are all just should be part of Russia, like, the exact opposite has been demonstrated by this invasion. That's this thing, this invasion, I feel like is counterproductive for Putin in just about every way, and that's what makes me think that he must have bought into his own propaganda. Otherwise, like, it just doesn't make sense what he's doing here.
A Russian dictator invading a foreign country has cost around the world, and I'm taking robust action to make sure the pain of our sanctions is targeted at the Russian economy, and that we use every tool at our disposal to protect American businesses and consumers. Tonight, I can announce the United States has worked with 30 other countries to release 60 million barrels of oil from reserves around the world. America.
I doubt that will have that much of an impact. I mean, Biden has already tapped into the strategic reserve. Now, I'm not sure how many barrels that was before, but it was the same thing. They did it in unison with, like, the UK and China and, like, a couple other countries. Tapping into the reserves, like, it could have a small increase, but, like, I would imagine, like, the price of oil is still going to go up. Like, for example, gas prices are still going to go up. It is something, though. Like, we have reserves. We might as well use them.
We'll lead that effort, releasing 30 million barrels of our own strategic petroleum reserve. And we stand ready to do more if necessary, united with our allies. These steps will help blunt gas prices here at home, but I know news about what's happening can seem alarming to all Americans. But I want you to know, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. When the history of this era is written, Putin's war in Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger. While it shouldn't have taken something so terrible for people around the world to...
Mitch McConnell's like the only person that didn't clap. I don't understand. Like, everybody's clapping. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think it's silly that they're clapping so much. But, like, Mitch McConnell is the only person. It's just stone-faced. That's weird.
What's at stake? Now everyone sees it clearly. We see the unity among leaders of nations, a more unified Europe, a more unified West. We see unity among the people who are gathering in cities and large crowds around the world, even in Russia, to demonstrate their support for the people of Ukraine. In the battle between democracy and autocracies, democracies are rising to the moment, and the world is clearly choosing the side of peace and security. This is the real test. It's going to take time. So let us continue to draw inspiration from the iron.
It's just a rhetorical thing, but like I do like, I guess, that Biden does, like, he seems to center democracy a lot in his like rhetoric. Now I wish that he centered that more in like his practices, and that we weren't giving like millions of dollars worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia and like other dictatorships. But it's a small like rhetorical difference. But like as a big fan of democracy myself, I do like that he talks about democracy. Like that is, it's something. I just wish that his like actions actually affected it. And I imagine, especially once he starts getting to more domestic stuff, we will see a lot of that. We will see a lot of him maybe saying things that could potentially be good, but that aren't reflected in his actions. We'll see though. We'll see.
Of the Ukrainian people, to our fellow Ukrainian Americans who forged the deep bond that connects our two nations, we stand with you. We stand with you. Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom. What? And he will never.
People made such a big deal. Wait, was that it? He just says Iran, like he like missed the K. He was like Ukrainian, Iranian. Like that was so small. Everyone was talking about that a ton. I don't know. I feel like that was pretty small. What do people think? What do people think on Twitch? Wow, Corey Story. What's up, Corey Story? What's up, Suma D? Oh, sorry. What's up, Marian OFTW? How's it going? What's up, Mix? Awesome. Yeah, and yeah, for people. Sorry. For people that are just watching on TikTok, I'm also streaming on YouTube and Twitch. So if you want to see like the video too, you can go watch on there. The link is in my bio.
Never weaken the resolve of the free world. Tonight, in an America that has lived through two of the hardest years this nation has ever faced. The pandemic has been punishing, and so many families are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to keep up with the rising cost of food, gas, housing, and so much more. I understand, like many of you did. My dad had to leave his home in Scranton, Pennsylvania to find work. So like many of you, I grew up in a family when the price of food went up. It was felt throughout the family. It had an impact. That's what one of the first things I did as president was fight to pass the American Rescue Plan. Because people were hurting. We needed to act, and we did. Few pieces of legislation have done more at a...
American Rescue Plan did have some pretty good things in it. Obviously, it was better than the CARES Act, and it was better than the... I always forget the acronym they used for the second one, but whatever the one they passed in December was, because a greater percentage of the American Rescue Plan went to like regular people rather than like large corporations. They still had a lot of problems with it. There's still a lot of problems with the American Rescue Plan, but it was better than the two stimulus bills that came before it. For example, like the child income tax credit, which helped lift hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty. But because they didn't, well, we'll wait on the critiques on Build Back Better, because I'm sure he's going to get into that.
Moment in our history to lift us out of a crisis. It fueled our efforts to vaccinate the nation and combat COVID-19, delivered immediate economic relief to tens of millions of Americans. It helped put food on the table. Remember those long lines of cars waiting for hours just to get a box of food put in their trunk? It cut the cost of health care insurance. And as my dad used to say, it gave the people just a little bit of breathing.
I would want to see those numbers. That the health insurance costs were cut by the American Rescue Plan. I want to see those. I have not seen those updated numbers. I'm very interested to.
Unlike the $2 trillion tax cut passed in the previous administration that benefited the top 1% of Americans, the American Rescue Plan help working people and left no...
Dang, okay, he took a shot at the TCJA. He took a shot at Trump's tax cuts there. Okay. I want to see that again. Also, Chuck Schumer like tried to clap and like nobody clapped with him. Let's see. All right, let's hear that.
Unlike the $2 trillion tax cut passed in the previous administration that benefited the top 1% of Americans, the American Rescue Plan
Okay,
help
all right.
working.
I like that. I like that from Biden. Okay, talking about tax cuts and jobs. Now, it would be good if Biden then increased those taxes on corporations and the billionaires, but at least he's talking about it. I guess. Like that's the thing. Like yeah, he took a shot there. But like let's put some weight behind that.
And left no one behind. Folks, and it worked. It worked. It worked. We created jobs, lots of jobs. In fact, our economy created over 6.5 million new jobs just last year. More jobs in 1 year than ever before in the history of the United States of America.
It's true, but it's a really misleading claim. It just is. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I get why he'd bring it up because it is. It could be like an effective rhetorical thing. But like, it's because so many jobs went away during the pandemic and like so many are returning. Like that's why the numbers were so large. How many of those are from Biden's policy specifically? I'm sure that there is a sizable portion. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like that figure is a little misleading. Let's be honest.
We grew at a rate of 5.7 last year, the strongest growth rate in 40 years. And the first step in bringing fundamental change to our economy that hasn't worked for working people in this nation for too long. For the past 40 years, we were told that tax break for those at the top and benefits would trickle down and everyone would benefit. But that trickle-down theory led to a weaker economic growth, lower wages, bigger deficits, and a widening gap between the top and everyone else in nearly a century. Look, Vice President Harris and I ran for office, and I realized we had fundamental disagreements on this, but ran for office with a new economic vision for America. Invest in America, educate Americans, grow the workforce, build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down, because we know.
It's fine rhetoric. That is. It's good rhetoric. I like that. This bottom up approach, trickle down. Taking a shot at trickle down economics. If I remember correctly, the last time he did a speech like this, same thing. He was talking about how trickle down economics isn't that great, which is good. I like that. Just policy. I feel like yeah.
As we know. Because we know when the middle class grows. When the middle class grows, the poor have a way up and the wealthy do very well. America used to have the best roads, bridges, and airports on earth. And now our infrastructure is ranked 13th in the world. We won't be able to compete for the jobs of the 21st century if we don't fix it. That's why it was so important to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I thank my Republican friends who joined to invest.
There were a lot of problems with the infrastructure bill. Like, don't get me wrong, we need to spend substantially more. That's why I support a Green New Deal. A Green New Deal is a massive infrastructure package, creates jobs, transitions our economy to cleaner renewable energy. That being said, the infrastructure bill that was passed, I mean, there's a reason 17 Republicans in the Senate voted on with it. There's an enormous amount of like privatization and giveaways for like private companies in that bill. There are like some good things, just like in a lot, like when you have a big bill like that, it's a massive bill. There are going to be some positive things, but it had its issues.
Build America, the single biggest investment in history. It was a bipartisan effort, and I want to thank the members of both parties who worked to make it happen. We're done talking about infrastructure weeks. We're now talking about an infrastructure decade. And look, it's going to transform America, to put us on a path to win the economic competition of the 21st century that we face with the rest of the world, particularly China.
I knew it. I knew there was going to be China fear-mongering. We knew it was coming.
Oh, Xi Jinping, it's never been a good bet to bet against the American people. We'll create good jobs for millions of Americans, modernizing roads, airports, ports, waterways, all across America. And we'll do it to withstand the devastating effects of climate change and promote environmental justice. We'll build a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Begin to replace the poisonous lead pipes so every child, every American has clean water to drink at home and at school. We're going to provide.
See, part of what I don't like about the China fear mongering is that, like, when he talks about climate change, there, like, you have to synthesize those issues. Like, it's not enough. Like, that's the thing with the Green New Deal. I think a Green New Deal would be really important, but it needs to be a global initiative. Like, we need a global Green New Deal, for lack of a better word. And that involves working very closely with China, like to transition globally to net zero emissions by 2050, which is what we need to do. That China is going to have to be a part of that process, and so, like, trying to frame this as, like, our opposition to China, I think that that plays out really bad in terms of, like, what that actually entails.
Provide affordable, high-speed internet for every American. Rural, suburban, urban, and tribal communities. 4,000 projects have already been announced. Many of you have announced them in your districts. And tonight, I'm announcing that this year, we will start fixing over 65,000 miles of highway and 1,500 bridges in disrepair.
Obviously, specifics matter, but it's good stuff.
Taxpayers' dollars to rebuild America. We're going to do it by buying America. Buy American products. Support American jobs. The federal government spends about $600 billion a year to keep this country safe and secure. There's been a law in the books for almost a century to make sure taxpayers' dollars support American jobs and businesses. Every administration, Democrat or Republican, says they'll do it, but we're actually doing it. We'll buy America to make sure everything from the deck of an aircraft carrier to the steel on highway guardrails is made in America from beginning to end. All of it.
Yeah, he's not wrong about a lot of people making those claims. For example, Trump had, like, a similar thing, like a Made in America thing that just didn't really, like, pan out in practice. Who knows if Biden's will also, but we'll see how much of this is just rhetoric.
But folks, to compete for the jobs of the future, we also need a level playing field with China and other competitors. That's why it's so important to pass the Bipartisan Innovation Act sitting in Congress that will make record investments in emerging technologies and American manufacturing. We used to invest almost 2% of our GDP in research and development. We don't now. China is. Let me give you one example why it's so important to pass. If you travel 20 miles east of Columbus, Ohio, you'll find 1,000 empty acres of land. It won't look like much, but if you stop and look closely, you'll see a field of dreams, the ground on which America's future will be built. That's where Intel, the American company that helped build Silicon Valley, is going to build a $20 billion semiconductor megasite, up to 8 state-of-the-art factories in one.
Weird shadow for Intel. That's an interesting choice. But I understand the desire to want to be less dependent on Taiwan for semiconductors. Taiwan produces an insane amount of the world's semiconductors. Let's see, we can try and find that number really fast because it's actually unreal. Let's see, semiconductors. Yeah, so 2 Taiwanese companies have roughly a 72% market share of the global semiconductor production. I mean, that's just staggering, and so I definitely understand why we would want to have that not be so dependent.
10,000 new jobs. And in those factories, the average job about $135,000 a year. Some of the most sophisticated manufacturing in the world to make computer chips the size of a fingertip. The power of the world in everyday lives, from smartphones, technology, the internet, technology that's yet to be invented. But that's just the beginning. Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger, who's here tonight, I don't know where Pat is. Pat, there you go, Pat. Stand up. Pat. Pat came to see me and he told me they're ready to increase their investment from 20 billion to 100 billion. That would be the biggest investment in manufacturing in American history. And all they're waiting for is for you to pass this bill. So let's not wait any longer. Send it to my desk, I'll sign it, and we'll really take off in a big way.
Biden really needs, like, if he wants to pass bills, like he needs to be putting pressure on these politicians that are holding it up in a bigger way than just during, like, State of the Union. I mean, this is one of the biggest things with Build Back Better. Biden was really not putting as much pressure as he should have on Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Now, let's say we completely remove Joe Manchin from the equation, and let's say we also remove Kyrsten Sinema. It's not out of the realm of possibility that there would have been other Democrats, more like corporate aligned Democrats, that like also like had reservations and were only supporting Build Back Better because they knew that they had Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema to prevent it. So Biden needs to be harder with this thing. He needs to use the bully pulpit more frequently, especially when he was first getting into office, when his approval rating was way higher than it is now.
And folks, Intel is not alone. There's something happening in America. Just look around and you'll see an amazing story. The rebirth of pride that comes from stamping products made in America. The revitalization of American manufacturing. Companies are choosing to build new factories here when just a few years ago they would have gone overseas. That's what's happening. Ford is investing $11 billion in electric vehicles, creating 11,000 jobs across the country. GM is making the largest investment in its history, $7 billion to build electric vehicles, creating 4,000 jobs in Michigan. All told, 369,000 new manufacturing jobs were created in America last year alone.
One of the biggest things, if he wants to bring more manufacturing back, though, is he needs to get rid of a lot of the tax incentives that currently exist that incentivize companies to go and manufacture offshore. It's like, it is one thing to talk about, you know, GM and Ford investing more into like electric vehicle plants here, but he does need to go after it in a more tangible way.
Folks, powered by people I've met like JoJo Burgess, from generations of union steelworkers in Pittsburgh, who's here tonight. Where are you, JoJo? There you go. Thanks, buddy. As Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says, it's time to bury the label Rust Belt. It's time to see the what used to be called Rust Belt become the home of a significant resurgence of manufacturing. And with all the bright...
That line did not land. That line, that would... I don't know how, like, what better way you could have framed that, but, like, saying, like, I get the symbolism, you know, you don't want to call it the Rust Belt anymore, you want to call it something more like exciting. But that line did not land.
In our economy, record job growth, higher wages, too many families are struggling to keep up with their bills. Inflation is robbing them of gains they thought otherwise they would be able to.
I will give Biden some credit if he talks about monopolies and corporate power. If he talks about these corporations that have consolidated and are one of the huge factors driving the current inflation that we're seeing. Or he also should talk about supply chains, just because that's a huge part of it, which is kind of what he's done with Made in America. But like, I wish he was connecting the dots more on saying like, okay, a lot of this inflation has to do with supply chains because we're so dependent on like this offshore supply lines that then because of COVID and everything that like that's causing a lot of this inflation. Also, he needs to be talking about corporations and their market share. I don't know if he's going to do either, but like he kind of did with the Made in America, but I feel like he needs to connect that. Like, I don't know, but we'll see.
I get it. That's why my top priority is getting prices under control. Look, our economy roared back faster than almost anyone predicted. But the pandemic meant that businesses had a hard time hiring enough people because of the pandemic to keep up production in their factories. So you didn't have people making those beams that went into buildings because they were out. The factory was closed. The panic also disrupted the global supply chain. Factories close. When that happens, it takes longer to make goods and get them to the warehouses, to the stores, and prices go up. Look at cars last year. 1/3 of all the inflation was because of automobile sales. There weren't enough semiconductors.
Now talk about the consolidation in car manufacturing globally. That's not even just a U.S. issue. Just globally, there's an enormous amount of consolidation in that industry
to make all the cars that people wanted to buy. And guess what? Prices of automobiles went way up, especially used vehicles as well. And so we have a choice. One way to fight inflation is to drive down wages and make Americans poorer. I think I have a better idea to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages. Folks.
But how? He's got to answer that with the how. Like, you can't just say that and then not, like, because I agree, obviously, that is the side of the equation that you want to be tackling. But, like, how? You do that by tackling corporate shares and making the supply chains more resilient.
More cars and semiconductors in America. More infrastructure and innovation in America. More goods moving faster and cheaper in America. More jobs where you can earn a good living in America. Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America.
Okay, there you go. That's what I was looking for. Tying the inflation to that supply chain issue. I like that.
Look. Economists. Call this increasing the productive capacity of our economy. I call it building a better America. My plan to fight inflation will lower your costs and lower the deficit. 17 Nobel laureates in economics said my plan will ease long-term inflationary pressures. Top business leaders, and I believe most Americans support the plan. And here's the plan. First, cut the cost of prescription drugs.
How, Biden? How do you plan on doing that? Every president says that they want to cut the cost of prescription drugs. Trump said he wanted to cut the cost of prescription drugs, but you actually have to put those policies in place. It's not enough just to say it. And to do that, you're going to have to figure out how to get things through this Congress. And the clock is ticking because midterms are coming up.
We pay more for the same drug produced by the same company in America than any other country in the world. Just look at insulin. 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. In Virginia, I met a 13-year-old boy, the handsome young man standing up there, Joshua Davis. He and his dad both have type 1 diabetes, which means they need insulin every single day. Insulin costs about $10 a vial to make. That's what it costs the pharmaceutical company. But drug companies charge families like Joshua and his dad up to 30 times that amount. I spoke with Joshua's mom. Imagine what it's like to look at your child who needs insulin to stay healthy and have no idea how in God's name you're going to be able to pay for it. What it does to your family, but what it does to your dignity.
Never a bad time to bring up that literally the inventors of insulin sold the patent for $1 specifically for the reason that they said that they weren't interested in making money off of it. They just wanted it to be for the world. I believe that was even the phrase that they said insulin belongs to the world. And so they sold the patent for $1 because they're like, we don't want cost to be a barrier for people getting this. And it's just such a perversion of that when we look at the outrageous cost of insulin today.
Your ability to look your child in the eye, to be the parent you expect yourself to be. I really mean to think about that. That's what I think about. You know, yesterday, Joshua's here tonight, but yesterday was his birthday. Happy birthday, buddy, by the way. For Joshua and 200,000 other young people with type 1 diabetes, let's cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month. So everyone can afford it. And drug companies will do very, very well.
I mean, it's still pretty good profit margin when he was talking about the $10 it costs to make it currently. I think that, I mean, we'll see if that actually goes through. Like, that's the thing, yeah, price cap on insulin. Let's actually see it happen.
Margin. While we're at it, I know we have great disagreements on this floor of this. Let's let Medicare negotiate the price of prescription drugs.
That's another one. Oh, that's a no-brainer. Medicare being able to negotiate the cost of prescription drugs is like overwhelmingly popular with the American people. Like even Republicans, I'm pretty sure it's even the majority of Republicans support it. If not the majority, it's like a sizable minority. That's another one, and that was in Build Back Better. And I'm sure he's about to tie this into Build Back Better, but we'll see. But like also Build Back Better is gone. Like it didn't pass. Like these should be introduced as like individualized bills. Like he should pass like just a single bill. He should propose it of Medicare negotiating prescription drugs, and at the very least make the people that are saying that they're against that say I am against this specifically, not just the other. Because whenever it's a big bill like Build Back Better, they'll say, oh, there's these like tiny things in there that I disagree with. You know, there's too much waste. He should be proposing these on like an individualized basis, and like really, if they're gonna vote against it, make them like openly vote against that sort of thing.
For VA drugs. Look, the American Rescue Plan is helping millions of families with Affordable Care Act plans to save them $2,400 a year on their health premiums. Let's close the coverage gap and make these savings permanent. And second,
I wonder if he's going to talk about a public option. That was one of the big things that Biden ran on in the primaries, is that he opposed Bernie's Medicare for All plan, but he did say he supported a public option. I wonder if he's even going to mention that today. Like he's super walked that back. Like he said the public option, that was what he was going to fight for. He like hardly ever talks about it anymore. So will it even be brought up in this speech?
Let's cut energy costs for families. An average of $500 a year by combating climate change. Let's provide an investment tax credits to weatherize your home and your business, to be energy efficient and get a tax credit for it. Double America's clean energy production in solar, wind, and so much more. Lower the price of electric vehicles, saving another $80 a month that you're not going to have to pay at the pump. Folks, the third thing we can do to change the standard of living for hardworking folks is cut the cost of child care.
This was another big one. Child care should be universal. It should be free. And Biden even proposed, like that was in Build Back Better, like at least the original one that was proposed, like that was like Bernie's original plan, and that Biden originally kind of endorsed, and it got whittled down to just a shell of its former self, but like that was actually in there. It was universal child care nationwide. Hopefully he talks about it here.
Cut the cost of child care. If you live in a major city in America, you pay up to $14,000 a year for child care per child. I was a single dad for 5 years, raising 2 kids. I had a lot of help, though. I had a mom, a dad, a brother, and a sister that really helped. But middle class and working folks shouldn't have to pay more than 7% of their income to care for the young children. My plan...
It should be free. It should be free at the point of service, just like people shouldn't have to pay for public school. The same should apply to child care. But, you know, I would, yeah.
My plan would cut the cost of child care in half for most families. And help parents, including millions of women who left the workforce during the pandemic because they couldn't afford child care, to be able to get back to work, generating economic growth. But my plan doesn't stop there. It also includes home and long-term care, more affordable housing, pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds. All these will lower costs to families.
I like that he centered the idea of like a lot of people did leave the workforce because they couldn't afford childcare. And the idea of like having a universal childcare system would help incentivize some of those people to return to the workforce. I like that he made that argument because I think it's a good one.
And nobody, let me say this again, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in new taxes. Not a single penny. I may be wrong.
I don't like that he's phrasing this as like things that he's like just gonna do. Like he needs to be talking about like this was proposed. Like he's been proposing this stuff for a year, but he hasn't made like tangible steps to get them implemented because of the pushback in the Senate. Like that should be a really big like I feel like he hardly talked about that. Like he kind of put some pressure on the Senate like earlier in the State of the Union address. That should be a primary focus of this. I feel like. Because otherwise he's just going to talk about things, and then when people watch this a year from now, they're going to be like, wait, none of this happened.
My guess is if we took a secret ballot in this floor, that we'd all agree that the present tax system ain't fair. We have to fix it. I'm not looking...
They're literally the ones that make the taxes. Like, the people in this room, if they don't have to take a secret ballot, they could vote on it in Congress. Like, I don't...
Punish anybody. Well, let's make corporations and wealthy Americans start paying their fair share. Look, last year, like Chris Coons and Tom Carper and my distinguished Congresswoman, we come from the land of corporate America. There are more corporations incorporated in America than every other state in America combined. And I still won 36 years in a row. The point is, even they understand they should pay just a fair share. Last year, 55 of the Fortune 500 companies earned $40 billion in profit and paid zero in federal taxes. Now look, it's not fair. That's why I proposed to...
Were they booing the people not paying taxes? Or are those Republicans booing that Biden was criticizing that? I wonder.
15% minimum tax rate for corporations. We've got, and that's why in the G7 and other meetings overseas, we're able to put together, I was able to be somewhat helpful, 130 countries agree on a global minimum tax rate. So companies can't get out of paying their taxes at home by shipping jobs and factories overseas.
That would be really good if that could happen, a global minimum corporate tax rate. There's going to be a lot of pushback for that, obviously internationally, but like that would actually be a really good policy.
It'll raise billions of dollars. That's why I propose closing loopholes for the very wealthy who pay a lower tax rate than a teacher and a firefighter. So that's my plan, but we'll go in more detail later. We will grow the economy, lower the cost of families. So what are we waiting for? Let's get this done. We all know we've got to make changes. Folks, and while you're at it, confirm my nominees for the Federal Reserve, which plays a critical role in fighting inflation. My plan will not only lower costs and give families a fair shot, it will lower the deficit. The previous administration not only ballooned the deficit with those tax cuts for the very wealthy and corporations, it undermine the watchdogs, the job of those to keep pandemic relief.
I would like to see Biden follow through with that, because like obviously when he's saying it would reduce the deficit, he's saying that like through increased spending on production and other things like that, like public spending, that will increase national production, which will then increase tax revenue because people will be more productive as a result. I'd like to see him connect the dots for people on that, because that's something that's very counterintuitive for most people. Like you spend more and then that has a downstream effect that actually does boost tax revenue and things like that, because of things like increased economic activity. And I wonder,
we had those debates about whether or not those watchdogs should be able to see every day how much money was being spent, where was it going to the right place. In my administration, the watchdogs are back. And we're going to go after the criminals who stole billions of relief money meant for small business and millions of Americans. Tonight, I'm announcing that the Justice Department will soon name a chief prosecutor for pandemic fraud.
I would be interested to see that. There were a number of large corporations that were taking small business like PPP loans. For example, like Shakey's, I think it's a big company, and they were like taking small business money. So I'd be interested to see that. My guess is it won't happen to any substantial degree, but I would love to be wrong.
Look. I think we all agree. Thank you. By the end of this year, the deficit will be down to less than half of what it was before I took office. The only president ever to cut the deficit by more than $1 trillion in a single year. Lowering your cost also meant demanding more competition. I'm a capitalist, but capitalism without competition is not capitalism.
Why must he do that? I know he's a capitalist. I know he is, but he just hurts my soul just to see him so proudly say that. We need Bernie.
Without competition is exploitation. It drives up.
Also, he's doing the cringy thing where he's saying like, oh, like corporations like getting larger, that's not actually capitalism. That's still capitalism, but whatever. I think that this is going to be the part where he starts talking about breaking up corporations. I would love it if he goes in deep on this and if any of this actually happens, because this is like literally one of the most pressing issues in the economy.
Profits. When corporations have to compete, their profits go up and your prices go up when they don't have to compete. Small businesses and family farmers and ranchers, I need not tell some of my Republican friends from those states. Guess what? You got 4 basic meat packing facilities. That's it. You play with them or you don't get to play at all. And you pay.
Call him out. He should call him out. Call out Tyson Foods. He should. Oh, I wish he would do that right here. I like that he's just, even it, just referencing them is a positive thing. But like, I mean, Tyson literally has like 20% market share in beef, pork, chicken production in the U.S. One company.
A hell of a lot more. A hell of a lot more because there's only 4. See what's happening with ocean carriers and moving goods in and out of America. During the pandemic, about half a dozen or less foreign-owned companies raised prices by as much as 1,000% and made record profits. Tonight, I'm announcing a crackdown on those companies overcharging American businesses and consumers. Folks, and as Wall Street firms take over more nursing homes,
wait, I would like him to go into more detail on what the crackdown means. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, we'll see. We'll see what was actually like proposed. But just saying you're going to crack down, I would like to see something slightly more tangible put forward.
Homes has gone down, and costs have gone up. That ends on my watch. Medicare is going to set higher standards for nursing homes and make sure your loved ones get the care they deserve and that they inspect and they will look at closely. We're also going to cut costs to keep the economy going strong and giving workers a fair shot, provide more training and apprenticeships, hire them based on skills, not just their degrees. Let's pass the Paycheck Fairness Act and paid leave. Raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour and extend the child tax credit so no one has to raise a family in poverty. Let's increase Pell Grants, increase our historic support for HBCUs, and invest in what Jill, our First Lady who teaches full-time, calls America's best-kept secret, community colleges. Look.
This was another thing in Build Back Better, universal community college. Now, I think all public universities should be tuition free, but if we could actually get universal free community college, that would be really something. That's where the pressure needs to be applied. This was proposed in Build Back Better. It's not going to pass. It's not going to happen. And so, like, he can't just be saying these things like he's going to do them without also talking about how he's going to get them done.
Let's pass the PRO Act. When a majority of workers want to form a union, they shouldn't be able to be stopped.
PRO Act. That's another really good piece of legislation. It's not going anywhere in the Senate, though.
When we invest in our workers and we build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out, together we can do something we haven't done in a long time. Build a better America. For more than 2 years, COVID has impacted every decision in our lives and the life of this nation. And I know you're tired, frustrated, and exhausted. That doesn't even count the close to 1 million people who sit at a dining room table or a kitchen table and look at an empty chair because they lost somebody. But I also know this, because of the progress we've made, because of your resilience and the tools that we have been provided by this Congress, tonight I can say we're moving forward safely back to more normal routines. We've reached a new moment in the fight against COVID-19, where severe cases are down to a level not seen since July of last year.
I wonder what the COVID pivot is going to be here. Obviously, his big thing was the vaccine requirement for businesses with over 100 employees or more. Well, actually, testing requirement with a vaccine stipulation where if you're vaccinated, you don't have to take the test every week. But I wonder what the pivot is going to be here in terms of COVID policy.
Just a few days ago, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention issued a new mask guidelines. Under the new guidelines, most Americans and most of the country can now go mask-free. And based on projections, more of the country will reach a point across the next couple of weeks. And thanks to the progress we've made in the past year, COVID-19 no longer need control our lives. I know some are talking about living with COVID-19, but tonight I say that we never will just accept living with COVID-19. We'll continue to combat the virus as we do other diseases. And because this virus mutates and spreads, we have to stay on guard. And here are 4 common sense steps as we move forward safely, in my view. First, stay protected with vaccines and treatments. We know how incredibly effective vaccines are. If you're vaccinated and boosted, you have the highest degree of protection. We'll never give up on vaccinating more Americans. Now, I know parents with kids under 5 are eager to see their vaccines authorized for their children. Scientists are working hard to get that done. We'll be ready with plenty of vaccines if and when they do. We're all ready. We are also ready with antiviral treatments. If you get COVID-19, the Pfizer pill reduces your chance.
That's really all you can do at this point, I suppose. Just letting people know it's available. Vaccines are going to be free, remain free. It's just hard. He is in a tough spot on this one. The Supreme Court slapped down his requirement, and so it's just like, other than just trying to incentivize people through other means, like saying you should get it, he's in a tough spot on that.
Ending up in the hospital by 90%. I've ordered more pills than anyone in the world has. Pfizer's working overtime to get us 1 million pills this month and more than double that next month. And now we're launching the Test to Treat initiative. So people can get tested at a pharmacy, and if they prove positive, receive the antiviral pills on the spot at no cost. Folks, if you're
just making testing, vaccines as widely available, as free at the point of service as possible. I mean, that's got to be the best path moving forward.
If you're immunocompromised or have some other vulnerability, we have treatments and free high-quality masks. We're leaving no one behind or ignoring anyone's needs as we move forward. On testing, we've made hundreds of millions of tests available, and you can order them for free to your doorstep. And we've already ordered free tests. If you already ordered free tests tonight, I'm announcing you can order another group of tests. Go to covidtest.gov starting next week, and you can get more tests. Second, we must prepare for new variants. Over the past, we've gotten much better at detecting new variants.
Actually, I amend my statement. One of the biggest things you should be focusing on right here is getting the global vaccines available to people globally, because that's the thing. Variants are going to keep popping up in different countries and can come to the U.S. And so he needs, making sure that because there are giant swaths of the world that haven't had even remotely the kind of access to vaccines that we have here in the U.S. and getting those populations the vaccines that they're asking for, they're begging for this stuff. That should be one of the primary focuses actually going forward.
If necessary, we'll be able to develop new vaccines within 100 days instead of maybe months or years. And if Congress provides the funds we need, we'll have new stockpiles of tests, masks, pills ready if needed. I can't promise a new variant won't come, but I can promise you we'll do everything within our power to be ready if it does. Third, we can end the shutdown of schools and businesses. We have the tools we need. It's time for America to get back to work and fill our great downtowns again with people. People working from home can feel safe and begin to return to their offices. We're doing that here in the federal government. The vast majority of federal workers will once again work in person. Our schools are open. Let's keep it that way. Our kids need to be in school.
Yeah, schools reopening is overwhelmingly popular at this point, and it also just, I think, in terms of the scientific evidence, also makes sense.
With 75% of adult Americans fully vaccinated and hospitalizations down by 77%, most Americans can remove their masks and stay in the classroom and move forward safely. We achieved this because we provided free vaccines, treatments, tests, and masks. Of course, continuing this costs money, so I'll not surprise you. I'll be back to see you all. And I'm going to soon send a request to Congress. The vast majority of Americans have used these tools and may want again. We may need them again, so I expect Congress, and I hope they'll pass that quickly. Fourth, we'll continue vaccinating the world. We've sent 475 million vaccine doses to 112 countries, more than any nation on earth. We won't stop, because you can't build a wall high enough to keep out a...
Let's see, someone in the Twitch chat asked about, it looks like this is a thing about transitioning like away from an 8-hour workday. Yeah, I think that moving towards basically either a 4-day work week or lengthening the time that is considered full-time currently, so like 7 hours a day, I guess. I think that would make a lot of sense. And there are places that are running tests for this right now. Japan is running some like small case studies on this. Germany is running some small case studies on this, and other countries on like transitioning to a 4-day work week as what is considered full-time. I think that would be really positive. And then for people watching, I'm also going on Twitch and YouTube, so if you guys want to see the video, you can go to either of those. The link is in my bio.
The vaccine can stop the spread of these diseases. You know, we've lost so much in COVID-19, time with one another. The worst of all, much the loss of life. Let's use this moment to reset. So stop looking at COVID as a partisan dividing line. See it for what it is, a god-awful disease. Let's stop seeing each other as enemies. Start seeing each other for who we are, fellow Americans. Look. We can't change how divided we've been. It was a long time in coming. But we can change how to move forward. On COVID-19 and
honestly, I wish that this would be a really good time to like bring up the fact that things like Medicare negotiating pharmaceutical drug prices, that is overwhelmingly popular with the American people, and bring up the fact that the people that are blocking that in the Senate are literally standing against one of the few things people are unified on. Like a lot of these populist economic policies are very popular. He should be talking about that. Like when he's talking about like he should synthesize these issues, talking about how these economic policies that he's proposing are also really popular with the majority of Americans.
Issues that we must face together. I recently visited New York City Police Department days after the funerals of Officer Wilbur Mora and his partner, Officer Jason Rivera. They were responding to a 9/11 call when a man shot and killed them with a stolen gun. Officer Mora was 27 years old. Officer Rivera was 22 years old. Both Dominican Americans who grew up in the same streets that they later chose to patrol as police officers. I spoke with their families. I told them that we were forever in debt for their sacrifices and will carry on their mission to restore the trust and safety in every community deserves. Like some of you that have been around for a while, I've worked with you on these issues for a long time. I know what works.
Crime bill.
Investigating crime prevention and community policing, cops who walk the beat, who know the neighborhood, and who can restore trust and safety. Let's not abandon our streets or choose between safety and equal justice. Let's come together and protect our communities, restore trust, and hold law enforcement accountable. That's why the Justice Department has required body cameras, banned choke calls, and restricted no-knock warrants for its officers. That's why the American Rescue Plan that you all provided $350 billion that cities, states, and counties can use to hire more police, invest in more proven strategies. Proven strategies like...
Was that the part? I think I heard that there was like a part where he takes like a shot at like defund the police, and like was that it? Like he's talking about like funding for policing there.
Proven strategies like community violence interruption, trusted messengers, breaking the cycle of violence and trauma, and giving young people some hope. We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police.
Never mind, he's super explicit about that. I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, Biden was very open about his opposition to defund the police, like all throughout. Like when he ran in the election, like that doesn't surprise me. It's interesting that he like is still talking about it, but still.
Fund them. Fund them. Fund them with resources and training. Resources and training they need to protect our communities. I ask Democrats and Republicans alike to pass my budget and keep our neighborhoods safe. And we'll do everything in my power to crack down on gun trafficking of ghost guns that you can buy online.
Because we haven't seen at all that just pumping money into the police departments doesn't necessarily help in reducing crime. It's almost like there's a lot of evidence to support that there needs to be more structural reforms, but whatever.
Assemble at home. No serial numbers. Can't be traced. I asked Congress to pass proven measures to reduce gun violence. Pass universal background checks. Why should anyone on the terrorist list be able to purchase a weapon? Why? Why? And folks, ban assault weapons with high-capacity magazines will open 100 rounds. You think the deer are wearing Kevlar vests? Look, repeal the liability shield. It makes gun manufacturers the only industry in America that can't be sued. The only one.
Yeah, the liability shield on gun manufacturers is an interesting one.
Imagine had we done that with the tobacco manufacturers. These laws don't infringe on the Second Amendment. They save lives. The most fundamental right in America is the right to vote and have it counted. And look, it's under assault. In state after...
Okay, that's an interesting transition to election reforms, but that's like a big one. Okay, all right, I don't mind.
New laws have been passed. Not only to suppress the vote, we've been there before, but to subvert the entire election. We can't let this happen. Tonight I call on the Senate to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, pass the John Lewis Act, Voting Rights Act.
Freedom to Vote Act, not a bad piece of legislation at all. That would be a big one. Same thing though, like it's the same. It's just so much repetitiveness where there's like some halfway decent things being proposed by Biden, but it's like it's all getting blocked in the Senate.
And while you're at it, pass the Disclose Act so Americans know who's funding our elections. Look, tonight, I like to honor someone who dedicated his life to serve this country. Justice Breyer, an Army veteran, constitutional scholar, retiring Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Justice Breyer, thank you for your service. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean it. Get up, stand up and see you. Thank you. And we all know, no matter what your ideology, we all
And I think people were saying, like, what are some, like, examples of, like, ways that, like, Freedom to Vote Act can, like, help people vote. I believe it's in that one where it's making, like, Election Day a national holiday. Because for a lot of people, if you're working on Election Day, you maybe don't have the time to go and vote before your polling place closes, or at least it makes it more difficult. And so by making Election Day a national holiday, you would make it substantially easier for people to go and vote, and that would increase voter turnout. Like, there's no question that we have a pretty big problem with voter turnout in this country. In the midterms, probably going to be like half of eligible voters won't vote. Like, we do need to, like, have ways to help people engaged more in the political process.
One of the most serious constitutional responsibility a president has is nominating someone to serve on the United States Supreme Court. As I did 4 days ago, I've nominated the Circuit Court of Appeals, Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of our nation's...
Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of the things that she was really like public for, was she's actually, like, defended people that were being held, like, without due process at Guantanamo Bay, and has, like, you know, defended their rights and, like, tried to argue that they should not be held without due process. And so, like, I mean, she's definitely not perfect, but, like, I as far as what I would expect from a Biden nomination, Ketanji Brown Jackson is not terrible, like, not at all. Like, I think that she will be given the current makeup of the court, the 6-3 conservative court, she's definitely an improvement, I would say.
Legal minds who continue in Justice Breyer's legacy of excellence. A former top litigator in private practice, a former federal public defender, from a family of public school educators and police officers.
And what's also fascinating about her is that, like, she was able, like, when she was appointed to her most current job to be on the appellate court. I'm not going to misspeak on that one, or I'll try not to misspeak on that one. But she was even voted, like Lindsey Graham, for example, voted for her, and I think a couple other Republicans. And so hopefully she'll have no problem getting, like, pushed through. And I really doubt Republicans are going to try and hold it up. Like, it will still, even with her, like, it's a liberal justice replacing another liberal justice. So, like, I doubt Republicans will have that big of a deal with it. But no, I don't, you know, like I said, her record's not perfect, but I do think that she will be a welcomed addition to the court, you know, compared to some of the other people that are currently on there.
She's a consensus builder. Since she's been nominated, she's received a broad range of support, including the Fraternal Order of Police and former judges supported by Democrats and Republicans. Folks, if we are to advance liberty and justice, we need to secure our border and fix the immigration system.
No, transitioning to the immigration stuff. Literally, roughly 1 million asylum seekers have been expelled without their asylum claims being heard over the course of 2021 using Title 42. This is one of the areas I think Biden deserves the most criticism. He has continued almost every Trump policy in regards to immigration. There's some things where he's slightly better on, and the ones he did try to stop, like Remain in Mexico, literally the court stopped him from doing it. And so, like, I don't know, I think immigration is hopefully he talks about Remain in Mexico here. Like, he tried to get rid of it, he should talk about it here, like, that, yeah, we shouldn't have that. And that
And as you might guess, I think we can do both. At our border, we've installed new technology like cutting-edge scanners to better detect drug smuggling. We've set up joint patrols with Mexico and Guatemala to catch more human traffickers. We're putting in place dedicated immigration judges in significant larger number so families fleeing persecution and violence can have their cases heard faster, and those who don't
not if you turn them away before they can have their asylum claims heard. Hundreds of thousands of people being turned away without having their claims heard. Like, I don't know. This really falls flat for me.
Here can be sent back. We're screening, we're securing commitments and supporting partners in South and Central America to host more refugees and secure their own borders. We can do.
Were they shouting "build the wall"? I didn't hear that part.
while keeping lit the torch of liberty that has led the generation of immigrants.
I saw someone say, like, this was on like Twitter or something. People were saying that like Marjorie Taylor Greene was like heckling during it. Like, I don't know to what degree. But someone said she was like booing. I haven't heard it. But maybe it hasn't happened yet. But it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Land, my forebears and many of yours, provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, those with temporary status, farm workers, essential workers. Revise our laws so businesses have workers they need and families don't wait decades to reunite. It's not only the right thing to do, it's economically smart thing to do. That's why the immigration reform is supported by everyone from labor unions to religious leaders to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Let's get it done once and for all. Folks, advancing liberty and justice also requires protecting the rights of women. The constitutional right affirmed by Roe v. Wade, standing precedent for half a century, is under attack.
This is going to be another one. This is very true. There is a greater than 0% chance that Roe versus Wade is overturned, or at the very least, effectively overturned with a ruling by the Supreme Court this year. We need either term limits on the Supreme Court, or they need to talk about adding justices to the Supreme Court. It's broken the way that it currently is. The fact that judges aren't democratically accountable. My preferred option is just adding justices. I'm sorry, not adding justices. Term limits. I think term limits make the most sense for the Supreme Court. But let's see what he says.
If you want to go forward,
but Biden has said he's against court packing, and I don't know what his opinions are on term limits, but I doubt he supports them.
We must protect access to health care, preserve a woman's right to choose, and continue to advance maternal health care for all Americans. And folks,
dang. Amy Coney Barrett was just sitting there. She knows. She's literally... That is honestly kind of telling. Because she was one of the justices that people were up in the air about on how she would rule on Roe versus Wade. That's not good.
LGBTQ plus Americans, let's finally get the Bipartisan Equality Act to my desk. The onslaught of state laws targeting transgender Americans and their families. It's simply wrong. I said last year, especially to our younger transgender Americans, I'll always have your back as your president so you can be yourself and reach your God-given potential. Folks, as I've just demonstrated...
I could be wrong on this, but is Biden the first president ever to, actively, just even in a vocal way, show support for the trans community? Because I can't imagine Trump did. I could be wrong, and I doubt Obama did, and then obviously Bush, Clinton, they never did. So I wonder if Biden is the first president to offer vocal support for the trans community. Obviously, in terms of policy, there hasn't been much before. Trump did. Did Trump really? I could be wrong on that because I know there's that picture of him where he did. He's who's with a pride flag. Trump did. Okay, maybe Trump did. I'd be interested to see that. Let me put it that way. I'd be interested to see it. I doubt it was in the State of the Union. Maybe he did. Maybe though. I would. I'm gonna fact check that. People are saying Trump did. I'm curious. Someone said Obama did. Did Obama? Did he? Oh, that's curious. Well, it was a question. I was just curious. I was just curious if Biden's the first. That would really surprise me about Trump. And that would also surprise me about Obama, frankly.
Appears we do not agree, and that we do agree on a lot more things than we acknowledge. I signed 80 bipartisan bills into law last year, from preventing government shutdowns, protecting Asian Americans from still too common hate crimes, to reforming military justice, and will soon be strengthening the Violence Against Women Act that I first wrote 3 decades ago. It's important. It's important for us to show the nation we can come together and do big things. So tonight I'm offering a unity agenda for the nation. 4 big things we can do together, in my view. First, beat the opioid epidemic.
End the war on drugs, Biden. end the war on drugs. What does he mean by beat the opioid epidemic? We should not be incarcerating people for these drug crimes. Actually, maybe he's going to talk about those there was some assistance that was being talked about being provided by the federal government. It's not what we should be. It's not like as far as we should be doing. But maybe that's what he's going to allude to here.
We can do increased funding for prevention, treatment, harm reduction, and recovery. Get rid of outdated rules and stop doctors prescribing treatments. Stop the flow of illicit drugs by working with state and local law enforcement to go after the traffickers. And if you're
opposite. War on drugs, literally a failed endeavor. Like we've seen it time and time again. It's literally wasted billions of dollars.
You should know you're not alone. I believe in recovery, and I celebrate the 23 million Americans in recovery. Second, let's take on mental health, especially among our children whose lives and education have been turned upside down. American Rescue Plan gave schools money to hire teachers and help students make up for lost learning. I urge every parent to make sure your school does just that. They have the money. We can all play a part. Sign up to be a tutor or a mentor. Children were also struggling before the pandemic: bullying, violence, trauma, and the harms of social media. As Frances Haugen, who is here tonight with us, has shown, we must hold social media platforms accountable for the national experiment they're conducting on our children for profit. Folks,
that's interesting. Whenever they say things like we must hold social media companies accountable, I feel like you got to be more specific.
Thank you. Thank you for the courage you showed.
That's also my problem with, like, and he mentioned it before, but like when he says things like immigration reform, is such a statement that is like vapid of like actual meaning, because like Trump's idea of immigration reform and my idea of immigration reform are going to be completely different. And so like just like when he says like, oh, we need immigration reform, I feel like it carries weight in the sense that like everyone does think that we need immigration reform, but there's very few people that support the status quo of immigration. But the question is then, what kind of immigration reform? But
it's time to strengthen privacy protections, ban targeted advertising to children, demand tech companies stop collecting personal data on our children, and let's get all Americans the mental health services they need. More people can turn for help, and full parity between physical and mental health care if we treat it that way in our insurance. Look, the third piece of that agenda is support our veterans. Veterans are the backbone and the spine of this country.
One of the ways we should support them is with a national plan to end homelessness in this country. There should be a federal plan to end homelessness through, you can do it through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. You can do it through whatever program you want to do it. Veterans are disproportionately homeless in this country. Tackling homelessness is a huge way, and also greater there are also aspects of healthcare that this could help. But I think that homelessness is what he should be centering on this specific issue.
Best of us. I've always believed that we have a sacred obligation to equip those we send to war and care for those and their family when they come home. My administration is providing assistance in job training, housing, and now helping lower-income veterans get VA care debt-free. And our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan have faced many dangers, one being stationed at bases breathing in toxic smoke from burn pits. Many of you have been there. I've been in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan over 40 times. These burn pits that incinerate waste, the waste of war, medical and hazardous material, jet fuel, and so much more. And they come home, many of the world's fittest and best trained warriors in the world. Never the same. Headaches, numbness, dizziness. A cancer that would put them in a flag-draped coffin. I know. One of
Someone shouting something during that? I think that was the part people were referencing. I think they were yelling 13 service members. I feel like that's a really bad taste. I mean, Biden literally lost his son. I never understood the criticism of Biden for the 13 service members that died during the withdrawal, literally trying to end the war in Afghanistan. But like, you never hear those criticisms about Trump, who surged in the number of troops in Afghanistan. He literally, when he got into office, he increased our troop numbers in Afghanistan. Now he eventually drew it down a little bit, but literally soldiers died as a result of that. But you don't. It was Lauren Boebert? Okay, yeah, it was Lauren Boebert. It was Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert. Okay, that makes sense. But I just feel like you don't blame the person that ended the war for the soldiers dying. You blame the person that sent them there in the first place. Now, to be fair, Biden voted for the invasion of Afghanistan, but that's not what they're talking about. They're like, I mean, you don't hear that about Obama or Bush or Trump, like the hundreds of soldiers that died over the course of the war, only when we're withdrawing troops. I don't know. I think it's just it just doesn't, the criticism just doesn't make sense to me. And also just in such bad taste when you're trying to talk about how he lost his son.
soldiers was my son, Major Bo Biden. I don't know for sure if the burn pit that he lived near, that his hooch was near, in Iraq and earlier than that in Kosovo, is the cause of his brain cancer, the disease of so many other troops. But I am committed to find out everything we can, committed to military families like Danielle Robinson from Ohio, the widow of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson. He was born a soldier, Army National Guard, combat medic in Kosovo and Iraq, stationed near Baghdad, just yards from burn pits the size of football fields. Danielle is here with us tonight. They love going to Ohio State football games. And they love building Legos with their daughter. But cancer from prolonged exposure to burn pits ravaged Heath's lungs and body. Danielle says Heath was a fighter to the very end. He didn't know how to stop fighting, and neither did she. Through her pain, she found purpose to demand that we do better. Tonight, Danielle, we are going to do better. The VA is pioneering new ways of linking toxic exposure to disease, already helping more veterans get benefits. And tonight, I'm announcing we're expanding eligibility to veterans suffering from 9 respiratory cancers. I'm also calling on Congress to pass a law.
I mean, just think about the way that we do healthcare in this country. The idea that like that those expansions need to be made to begin with. That like those veterans weren't already covered for the healthcare treatment that they need for things that could have been caused literally as a result of their service. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a good thing. Like, it's a good thing that Biden's talking about here. But it just shows like how messed up our current healthcare system is.
Make sure veterans devastated by toxic exposure in Iraq and Afghanistan finally get the benefits of the comprehensive health care they deserve. And fourth and last, let's end cancer as we know it. This is personal. This is personal to me and to Jill and to Kamala and so many of you. So many of you have lost someone you love. Husband, wife, son, daughter, mom, dad. Cancer is the number 2 cause of death in America, second only to heart disease. Last month, I announced the plan to supercharge the cancer moonshot that President Obama asked me to lead 6 years ago. Our goal is to cut cancer death rates by at least 50% over the next 25 years. And I think we can do better than that. Turn cancers from death sentences into treatable diseases.
Another thing that would really help is, I keep coming back to it, but universal healthcare, or frankly Medicare for all, where people were incentivized to get regular checkups at doctors' offices, so things like cancer can be caught ahead of time. And it's not just cancer. There's a number of illnesses that, like, if people are engaging in like preventative care and like getting regular checkups so that these things can be caught like earlier, that can really help with cancer survival rates. And I think that should definitely be part of what Biden is proposing here, or it should be. You know, I like that is one of the things, like our health like not only the cost becomes less of a thing, but also just the outcomes would substantially increase from people having greater access to healthcare.
For patients and their families. To get there, I call on Congress to fund what I call ARPA-H, Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, patterned after DARPA in the Defense Department. Projects that led in DARPA to the internet, GPS, and so much more to make our forces more safer and be able to wage war with more clarity. ARPA will have a singular purpose: to drive breakthroughs in cancer, Alzheimer's and diabetes, and more. A unity agenda for the nation. We can do these things. It's within our power, and I don't see a partisan edge to any one of those four things. My fellow Americans, tonight we've gathered in this sacred space, the citadel of democracy, in this Capitol. Generation after generation of Americans have debated great questions amid great strife and have done great things. We fought for freedom, expanded liberty, debated totalitarianism and terror. We built the strongest, freest, and most prosperous nation the world has ever known. Now is the hour, our moment of responsibility, our test of resolve and conscience, of history itself. It is in this moment that our character of this generation is formed. Our purpose is found. Our future is forged. Well, I know this nation. We'll meet the test. Protect freedom and liberty. Expand.
I'm just not a fan of like I get that he's gonna do it, you know, all this, but this stuff at the end is just so generic, and like I get it's supposed to be like inspiring and everything, but I'm just never like a fan of this. Like it's not even word salad, because like I guess he is saying stuff kind of, but it's just it's generic. I don't know. I get it though. I get that he's gonna end it like this though.
Innocent opportunity, and we will save democracy.
So I said platitudes. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, the platitudes.
Hard as those times have been, I'm more optimistic about America today than I've been my whole life, because I see the future that's within our grasp, because I know there's simply nothing beyond our capacity. We're the only nation on earth that has always turned every crisis we faced into an opportunity. The only nation that can be defined by a single word: possibilities. So on this night, on our 245th year as a nation, I've come to report on the state of the nation, the state of the union. And my report is this: the state of the union is strong because you, the American people, are strong. We are stronger today. We are stronger today than we were a year ago. And we'll be stronger a year from now than we are today. This is our moment to meet and overcome the challenges of our time. And we will, as one people, one America, the United States of America. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. Go get him.
Interesting. Well, you know, my biggest takeaway: they shouldn't allow clapping during the State of the Union till the very end. There should be a rule about that. I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, it wastes a lot of time because they clap after every sentence. But in all seriousness, I mean, it was a fine State of the Union. You know, there was some good policy stuff, like mostly the domestic stuff. You know, I obviously have like some disagreements with the way that Biden's handling the conflict in Ukraine. You know, and some of the things he proposed domestically, like, you know, if he was actually doing them, I would support it. But I just wish that there was more. And I get it. It's the State of the Union. You're not going to want to make it like super partisan. But like if he was like at other times putting pressure on the Senate to like get his agenda passed, I'd be more forgiving of it. But I don't know. It's fine State of the Union. I give it like a C minus, C minus. It's fine. It's fine. C minus to a D, maybe. No, C minus. Yeah, it wasn't an A. That definitely wasn't an A. It wasn't a B, and I'd give it low C, C minus. But whatever. It's Some say A plus. Lies. No one's saying A plus. 4 out of 10. 40. Yeah, that's probably a C. 40%. All right. But anyway, I'd give it C minus to a D. But just to put in perspective for people, if we were curving the grade, like look, I wouldn't give most State of the Unions very good grades. But regardless, I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you haven't already, you should follow on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitch, all that good stuff. The links are in my bio. And yeah, I hope people enjoyed going through this with me. Thank you all for watching. And then everyone on Twitch and YouTube, same thing. I hope you guys agreed and had a good time. But yeah, talk to you guys later.